Welcome to Night Storia, a realm where stories are not merely told, but woven into the very fabric of eternity. Here, every whispered tale, every forgotten legend, and every untold mystery finds a home, never to fade with time. I am Sebastian, your guide through this endless night of wonders. Together we will unravel the secrets hidden in the shadows, walk through worlds beyond imagination, and witness the birth of stories that will echo forever, imprinted on your heart, even after the night has passed. So take a deep breath, because the story begins now. Cursed Child. Rudy Armstrong's family must now move out of the house they've been living in. Their financial collapse forced them to move out of the big city, to a small town called Eldoria, and into the old house left behind by the wife's grandfather, Marinka. Standing firmly on a hill, with moss-covered walls and cracked windows, the house looked gloomy. The state of the house was in stark contrast to Eldoria City, which looked brighter, grander, and hardly looked like a small town. The economy was quite advanced, making the small town look almost like a big city among the mountains. Their first night there, strange noises were heard from the corners of the house. The wind carried not unintelligible whispers, creating a slow, creeping fear. "What is that sound?" Marinka asked Rudy, who was half asleep. "It's only an animal at best," Rudy replied briefly with his eyes closed. His tone showed as if he was reluctant to respond to his wife. Even though she used to live in that house, Marinka still felt scared. She was not used to the feel of the house, which was now quiet. In the silence of the night, Marinka's mind drifted, flying back to the past, when her late grandfather was still around. At that time, the house was very lively, filled with the joyful laughter of relatives who often gathered. But now, that same house seemed dead, long uninhabited and not visited by anyone. The next day, Rudy was busy repairing the roof of the house, which was full of holes, while Marinka and Michael, his younger brother, tried to tidy up the whole house. They worked enthusiastically until they were interrupted by the sound of children's laughter. It was soft and faint, but it pierced through the thick walls of the house. Michael walked over to the window and saw a child of about 8 years old, standing in the middle of the street. The child seemed completely motionless, just staring straight at the house with a strange smile on his face. "Who is that?" asked Michael curiously. Marinka, who saw Michael staring at the window, asked, "What's wrong, Michael?" "Look at that, Marinka. There's a strange little boy in front of the house," Michael replied. Marinka moved closer, getting a better look at the figure. His face was as pale as a porcelain doll, his eyes blank without any luster. His clothes were very shabby, unkempt and dirty. The boy looked like a homeless person. Probably aware of the house owner's attention, he suddenly ran quickly, left and disappeared like dust in the wind. That night, local residents arrived. They warned Rudy's family. "I'm sorry for suddenly asking strange questions, but is it true that this afternoon there was a strange little boy standing in front of your house?" said an elderly neighbor who introduced himself as Elias. His voice trembling, his eyes kept glancing at the window as if he was afraid something might appear. Michael answered the old neighbor's question. "That's right, we saw him. What's wrong with that little boy?" The whole neighborhood looked at each other until Elias said, "That child is a bringer of bad luck. Whatever he says, don't believe." Rudy, who didn't understand the situation, suddenly interjected, "Wait a minute. What are you talking about? Whose little boy are we talking about here?" Marinka then told her husband that there was a little boy standing in front of the house while they were cleaning the front room. "There was a strange little boy earlier. He stood in front of the house. Then he just left." "Then what's so strange about it? It could be the son of one of the neighbors around here, right?" Rudy answered with another question. He didn't understand the current situation at all, and tried to logicalize everything. That kid's bring the bad luck. His name is Bronca, said Charlie, whose house was right across the street from Grandpa Marinka's house. A bad luck bringer? How could an innocent little boy bring bad luck? Rudy tried to deny the nonsense he had just heard. He was a very logical person. Anything that sounded unreasonable would be rejected outright. Elias shook his head, then told him that Bronca was no ordinary child. She had lived a very long time, even longer than him. Suddenly, Rudy Armstrong's entire family was shocked and couldn't believe it. Marinka, who had memorized Rudy's mannerisms, quickly nudged his leg, giving a sign that it was better to keep quiet and not argue. Marinka realized that it would be too rude to continue denying what the guests who came to her house were saying, especially when they came with good intentions. As a newcomer to the neighborhood, it would be wiser to let the conversation flow without confrontation that could spark a dispute. Sorry if I sound like I'm scaring you, but I was a good friend of the late William. I certainly don't want his grandchild to experience bad luck in this place, Elias said as he stood up from his seat. He and the other residents then said goodbye to go home, and Rudy, as the owner of the house, certainly escorted his neighbors to the front of the house as a form of politeness. Everyone walked away, but one of them then turned around. "Rudy, if you have some free time, maybe you can join us and the other neighbors for some fun," said Charlie. Rudy's expression clearly showed a big question mark, and that was picked up by Charlie. He continued, "We like to gather here at night while singing songs and burning something for fragrance." Here Rudy actually felt strange, but as a new resident, he thought it would be a good idea to come along to get to know his neighbors better. Based on that consideration, Rudy decided to go. At first, there was nothing strange. Campfires, guitars, and beer created a familiar atmosphere. However, everything changed when some people started throwing dry objects into the fire. Thick smoke rose into the air, giving off a strange, pungent scent. Instantly, the atmosphere became quieter. Rudy looked around, realizing something was wrong. The light of the campfire flickered as if being played with by something invisible. Slowly, the sound of soft laughter was heard in the distance. The laughter of a child, and beyond the trees stood a pale figure with a ghastly smile. Bronca was there watching them. Rudy started to wonder, who is that little boy, and what is he doing in the forest? The wind was blowing hard as Rudy tried to find answers. He then remembered what Marinka had said a few moments ago about a strange boy named Bronca, who the locals say is the bad luck bringer. Rudy's heart raced. Cold sweat ran down his temples. There was something in Bronca's blank stare that made his hair stand on end. He tried to ignore it, but the atmosphere around him began to change. The chuckle became clearer, as if echoing inside his head. "I think I should go home," Rudy said, his voice sounding lower than usual. Charlie, who was sitting next to him, turned his head, looking at him with a faint smile. "What's the rush? The night is still long." Rudy shook his head, trying to be polite. "I'm just not feeling well." A few residents looked at each other, then chuckled. "You must not be used to Eldoria." However, Rudy couldn't ignore his bad feeling. Bronca was still standing there, not moving, not blinking. Everyone was still having fun, as if ignoring the little boy's existence. Rudy was right to feel uncomfortable. He didn't want to linger in this place. With the excuse of fatigue, he said goodbye and immediately left the place, stepping quickly towards his house. As he passed the quiet path, he could feel something following him from behind. Small steps, barely audible, but its presence felt so real. Rudy turned around. There was no one. But in the distance, behind the trees, he was sure someone was watching him. Rudy was facing a quite tense situation. What will happen to Rudy? Will he get home safely, or will something happen? We'll continue in the next episode. See you next time.